right, here we are. It is Pink Pixels Monday, friends. I'm so happy to be here with you all. This is the place where it all happens. Our chance to connect, our chance to tell stories, our chance to learn from somebody else's experiences, who they are, why they do it, and help us better understand this gaming world that we're in. We are learners through and through. And I know some people just like to put it on their LinkedIn profile that I love learning, but here we are doing extra time to come in and take in the knowledge of another person. So I love to see some good names in chat. Hello, friends. And it's good, of course, that we're here and we're tuning in because it means we're ready to learn something new. And that's such a healthy approach. When we come into these spaces, especially with gaming, as it grows, as it fluctuates, as it evolves, the more we get to hear from other people's narratives, the more we learn about this space that we're in, the games that we play, the people that we talk and connect with. This is an important space as we see people. It's not just these random faceless individuals, but they're human beings that have stories, that have motivations, that have passions. And by diving into it, we get a better picture of all of this. So I'm so thrilled that we're here. And today we have an amazing guest joining us. She's fantastic. I've been talking to her pre-stream and I just want you all to meet her right away. So I'm going to go ahead and close out this intro and we're going to toss it over to her. So please, if you all would be so kind to welcome our guest this evening, Seana. Say hello to us.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Seana Cavanagh. I've been in the video gaming space for over 15 years on the marketing side. I've worked for companies like 2K Games on their WWE and PGA Tour and other sports franchises. I worked for MLB in their video game and VR department. And most recently, I was just at a startup working on interactive series for Genvid Entertainment. So I was involved in the Silent Hill Ascension project. And there's two projects coming up, DC Heroes United and Borderlands project. But yeah, I've been a digital marketer my whole career, and it's been amazing to be in the gaming space and see it evolve over 15 years.
I love that. You have had so many visions and position, like point of references when you've been in the gaming space. But I want to pull back all the way to the beginning. So I want you to tell us about your journey in gaming and how it all started. What is your origin story?
Ooh, I like that
Right.
origin story. So my origin story is not straightforward. When I was in college, I was studying communications and I also double majored in photography.
Mm.
And I knew I wanted to do something in entertainment. I wasn't quite sure. I had internships at Interscope Records, really realizing I didn't want to work in the music industry at the time. And I also worked for, so Virgin had a Virgin Comics spinoff, and that wasn't quite right. And then after college, I really thought, hey, I want to be a film producer. So I started working on production management and film production for an indie. And the recession back in like '09 hit, and I was laid off, and I was looking for any like type of job in entertainment. And I answered a Craigslist posting for a marketing associate. And that was for a startup called Live Gamer. And so growing up, I was a gamer. But unlike today, there was no like degrees, there was no like easy entry into the gaming space.
Yeah.
And although it was a huge industry at the time, everyone just thought, even in the early 2000s, people make games in their garage, right? Like, despite all the like mega blockbuster hits. So I came in really like my first like kind of marketing job, my first foray into gaming. And I played a lot of games and I blew them away. And what was really cool about that company was at the time, video games were really like packaged retail products. Free to play hadn't happened yet. Farmville on Facebook, mobile games that were free to play hadn't happened yet. And we had seen this free to play model in Korea evolve. And so we were like the first startup to like really evangelize that. And working at that startup really like allowed me to grow. So sometimes you enter big companies and you're not allowed to be in charge of things, or, you know, your learning is a little bit stagnant because you're like are in this like very particular lane.
Yeah, this is what you
Um,
do, and that's it.
but at the startup, I was promoted twice. I became a marketing manager pretty quickly. And during this particular time, there was a lot of traditional entertainment companies that wanted to break into gaming but didn't know how. So I was in charge of their like a very specific consulting kind of side practice. So I was talking to folks like Warner Music, Condé Nast. I did like a virtual goods project with American Idol. Very like again, I'm dating myself with all these references. Um, but as someone in their like early mid 20s, like this was amazing experience. And that like working on those consulting and consumer brands really like honed in that like I want to be a consumer marketer.
Mm.
And so when I had the opportunity to work at Major League Baseball and their VR and video game division, I like hopped on that opportunity. And I was there for quite some time. It was an interesting setup. So I was dealing with some of the licensors like MLB The Show, Glue Mobile, like anyone that had a video game license that had MLB like team marks and logos.
Yeah.
I probably was the brand police and I'll also like help them go to market and promote their projects. But we also developed and published our own VR and video games. So I had worked on RBI baseball franchise for many years, and then a bunch of mobile games. So they had a home run derby mobile game and also VR experience. And because our team knew like Unity and like 3D programs like Unreal, they tapped into us to do like the first like MLB VR like not just games but like MLB has an app that streams like all the baseball games you could watch, right?
Yeah.
And so our team got to have a hand in that and I got to have a hand in that too.
I can't, what, how many people have that downloaded now? Like we're talking massive numbers. That's a huge audience of people who are probably trying to access it if they can't go to the games. I imagine that would be the next best thing.
It would be. And there was a lot of really cool like that our team did, like a lot of really cool like data visualization. But so it was a really cool role because in gaming, a lot of times you're only on the consumer side or you're only on the like maybe licensing side. And I got to do both.
Wow.
And then, 2K, I was able to work on 2K like this, just wanted to work on AAA games. I wanted, to do like really big fun marketing stints. So I relocated to California, started working at 2K as a senior global marketing manager, and really in charge of any sport that wasn't NBA. So WWE, PGA Tour, we had a variety of like console and also there was a mobile game. And so it was like really cool to like work in sports for about a decade. And like at WWE, it was really interesting because like the superstars are awesome. Like as a marketer, when you film someone,
That's
like
great
they
content.
are entertainers.
Yeah. You're like, I can use this.
With traditional athletes, you give them a script and it's like rough. You might have to like, because they're not actors, right? They're amazing at the sport they play.
Yes.
Sometimes you get a gem who can like do both, but like with the WWE superstars, they're physical, but they know how to freestyle. Like I would almost never give them a script and just like, it was almost again, like watching like a freestyle hip hop artist, like they can just run with it and make great content. Like I could never write it in the way that they can just like deliver it.
They had their own brand, their own voice that they knew how to bring to the table.
And a lot of them are gamers. Like we worked a lot with Xavier Woods, who's like on Up Up Down Down. So like there was a really like genuine like marketing connection between like the actual video game and the wrestlers. So it was pretty awesome. But then I decided, hey, I've been doing sports for a decade. And I knew the team at this startup called GenVid, which is they're working on an interactive series. So I'm trying to explain this in the best way that I can, but like take a traditional like TV show
Yeah.
and then kind of like merge it with a community. Like the community decides what's going to happen next.
Oh.
And there's a community layer where they can chat and they, can interact with one another.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like a TV show meets a video game meets like Twitch meets a community, basically.
Wow.
Yeah, and
That's a
so that
lot to
was like pretty
coordinate.
wild. Yeah, well, I'd never worked on a narrative project, and to work on a project that had so many different branches, and like we didn't know what would happen next. Like the mass audience decided, so
Mhm.
we had to build out all the different like branches and like probabilities for that. But it was cool because Silent Hill Ascension was like horror, and like
Mhm.
as a marketing person, like working on trailers and key art and like marketing assets for a horror project, and also like DC and Borderlands were amazing
Yeah.
IPs that I got to work with.
Mhm. I bet those were wild. And just every time you mention a new game, it feels like they have such a different look and feel and tone to every single
We do.
one. Oh my goodness. Like you can't compare some of these at all. Like especially with Silent Hill, that one is, its own thing, drastically with horror and the
It is
style and the
its own
ambience.
thing. I think for me, like the coolest thing is I've always been like a consumer of like culture. So
Mm,
it's like, yeah, I might watch a baseball game or basketball game, but like I'm also watching horror, and I'm also like I'm just
yeah.
into like what's happening in the moment. Like I do try to play like as many games as I can.
Hmm.
So it may seem difficult, but I think really as a marketer, you want to know your audience the most. And then what I do is I try to I mean, I'm just interested in it, so I do it naturally. But like, if I'm working on a horror project, I started watching and playing like every single like horror game I could get my hands on, or
The fun part of
working
the
on PG,
research.
yeah, working on PGA Tour. I actually like went to a golf course and like
Yeah.
played. I couldn't play a full round of golf. I only did like 9 holes, not 18, because geez, I'm terrible. So like each hole like took forever.
Yeah.
But it's like you kind of like consume yourself, and it's like an interesting project because then you kind of understand like, okay, like this is why this fan base likes the sport. Like I couldn't tell you anything about golf other than what watching like maybe Happy Gilmore before I
It's a good
started
reference.
working on golf.
That's a
But
legitimate golfing movie.
exactly, it's legit. It's really authentic. Like um but like you expose yourself to it, and then like you really start to get into it.
Mhm.
I never thought like my dad would probably laugh at me like if he heard me, so, like because when I was a kid he was super interested in it, he wanted to give me lessons. I was like,
Mhm.
no, this is
Yeah.
not my thing. But once you get into it, then I'm like, okay, I understand like why people like the sport, why they play it, like what their interaction is with everything else in like the ecosystem.
Mhm.
So it gives you ideas like, oh, how do we do something cool? Like for example, like in PGA Tour, we did work with the actor who played Shooter McGavin, who was like the villain in Happy Gilmore,
Yes.
and and we paired him with the Miz, who's a WWE superstar that likes to golf, like he's known for golfing,
Okay.
and a hip hop artist, Schoolboy Q, who also like legitimately likes to golf, and then like a real golfer. And then like we have this like campaign that's gold, right? It's like you take all these people who you wouldn't think like has any similar interests,
Yeah.
and we made like a whole campaign about it. It was great.
That is amazing. But that comes from
Yeah,
like being creative. But I love how you say like you like to take in culture. You seem to have a lot of not just flexibility, but curiosity. A lot of people are like, no, golf isn't for me. I'm just gonna come up with something. But you really take an open mind. Do you think that's essential as to why you've been able to be a part of so many campaigns and to want to be a part of them?
I think so. I think so. And I think like I probably opened my mind up more along the way.
Hmm.
Like when I was younger, I was probably like, I only listen to hip hop music. And now I'm like, no, I listen to everything. Like I
Hmm.
used to even say I didn't like country, but now we have like Beyonce making country songs. So
Yeah.
I think like I'm, to your point, curious. I'm interested in different types of people, different types of culture, and like creativity. Like gaming is creative, marketing is very creative. And I don't think if you're not curious and you don't keep an open mind, you'll miss some like amazing opportunity.
Hmm. Now, I like that you mentioned like amazing opportunities because you have quite the resume, and it still baffles me that this really started with
I feel
you.
weird. I feel weird hearing that. Is that
Sorry,
like
just take it because it's not
all
changing and it's
right?
accurate. Um,
Bring it, bring it.
I just feel it's so strange, but I think it's part of like the era that we grew up in that it started with Craigslist. Like if we were to hear that today, we'd be like, that's dangerous. Don't answer that advertisement.
It did start with Craigslist, and like I was like, okay, it's Craigslist. Like it wasn't. I mean, LinkedIn wasn't even really. I guess it was like sort of a thing, but like that was where you went, especially when you're in New York City to like go, or a major city to like go and find jobs.
Hmm.
And then I went up there and it was super legit. I met the team. I was like, I can talk about EverQuest. Like, I can talk about World of Warcraft. Like, I
Yeah.
knew more, like coming in as a young person and exposing yourself to different games and even just different culture. I feel like I was
Mm.
probably their like token person in their 20s to like ask like if something was cool or not.
You need to have that, right? Like, especially even now, like today, like the language, like, is this still popular? Can we say Riz still? Is that a thing? Cat?
I
I don't
will
know.
I will I will tap in my token 20-year-old friends and well, I'll call them mentors, my like cool mentor.
Yes. Honestly, can I say,
Um
I love that you call 20-year-olds mentors, right? Because I think sometimes when people think of mentorship, they think it only goes one way. Like it has to be like somebody who's higher than you, that's older than you. But mentorship can come from all directions. I think that's just another like
I
very
think it
open mind approach that you have. And I love that.
I think it totally can. And I feel like whenever I mentor someone, whether it's like officially like last year I was a part of like the Women in Gaming International has an amazing like mentorship program.
Yeah.
Or if it's unofficially, sometimes I'll get people that will DM me on LinkedIn, or like you're coaching someone who you're managing. They're like your direct report and you want them to like succeed and do well and grow.
Hmm.
I learned more from it. I mean, I don't want to say I learned more from it from the mentee, but I learned so much. Like,
Hmm.
and I love doing it. And yeah, I think like you have to keep an open mind. And um, to your point, like it isn't a one way thing.
Hmm.
If you treat it like a one way thing, you're probably not asking the right questions or having the right connection. And kind of like a side note, not just like mentorship, but just like someone after the Game Developers Conference posted, remember to be nice to everyone. Like you never know who is gonna be your next boss. Like I have interns who are like way more impressive than I am now, right? Like they could literally hire me, like but like sometimes people get in their career and they're just like thinking about, well, what can I get out of this person? You see it at GDC. They're like, oh, let me find the like most impressive executive.
Yeah.
I talk to everybody. I talk to like college grads because like you never know. They could have the next game getting funded. Like they
Hmm.
can make the next greatest like tool or innovation. And again, I think it's like you always want to keep an open mind to your point. And yeah, I like am just infinitely curious about everyone. And like as much as I think I am still really cool, I'm definitely not as cool as I was when I was 20, right? And I'm I am pretty in touch, but like there are people that I know that are going to be more in touch, right?
Yeah.
Than I am.
I'm not going to be able to speak to
So.
your how in touch you are, but you seem pretty cool for us professionals, right? Like we
Trying,
we have
yeah.
different standards of cool now for our take.
Damn it.
It's
I need to tap into that 20-year-old again. No, I'm
yeah,
kidding.
yeah. It's an energy.
Um
But you do
it is.
you bring an open mindedness to say like, yeah, I want to learn. I don't know everything. There's going to be people who bring in new ideas. I think that open mindedness allows you to be a good team player, allows you to support people and create actually really cool products instead of just,
Yeah.
well, this is the way we've always done it. Let's stick with this.
And it's like it's a confidence thing too. I think
Mhm.
the more you're in the industry and the more you're able to make connections, get your hands on projects, lead certain projects, like I'm able to say I don't know that because I'm confident. I don't
Yeah.
know in my 20s if I would have admitted I didn't know something, even though it was like pretty clear that I was green.
Yeah.
I didn't know shit about anything at the time,
Yeah.
except for what was cool and popular,
Mhm.
unlike today. No, I'm
Now you
no,
definitely know all of it.
I know all of it now.
Yes,
I am
yes.
like the oracle.
The I see it. Same energy, obviously. It's a one for one.
I'm serious though. I love your background. I'm getting
Oh,
neon
thank you.
lights next time. Like I'm just
We'll be
decorating my
twinning.
whole house in neon.
Honestly, you feel like the day version and I'm the night version. Like this.
I know it's so bright over
Right?
here.
Yeah, you live like it looks like you're like in sunny, beautiful California, and then I'm
I,
who knows,
I
nowhere where
mean,
the sun shines.
I am in sunny, beautiful California
Yeah,
right now,
yeah.
but there we go.
But
Oh man,
I love the energy that you bring because it just it allows you to work with people. It also makes you very welcoming. And you've been very connecting with open people. You just mentioned like you got back from GDC, you're active on
I did.
LinkedIn. What is it like to actually network? Because I think some people do see it your way of like, I gotta find the top marketing exec. And if I don't find them, then I'm not gonna bother talking to these, that kind of approach.
I think when you network and it's a one-way thing,
Mm-hmm.
it's um it's very transactional and it's really obvious to you and the person, right? And I think I've gotten better at, okay, maybe I'm asking someone for an intro to connect me to someone, which is a little bit transactional,
Yeah.
but I'm there for them when they need me too. And it might just not be for an intro. It might just be for like, hey, you want, I'm in the Bay Area. You want like, you're in the Bay Area. You want to like go to my favorite restaurant or like, let me help you in some way. Like I don't know. I try to build as many genuine connections as I can, even if like I'm not talking to my folks in my network like every day, like that's really hard to maintain.
Mm-hmm.
Like I do try to find ways, like if I can meet them in person at GDC, or like you see people posting stuff on LinkedIn all the time, like if I can repost or comment or share or hit them up on like on a personal level and help them in some way. It may not be like the same help that they can offer me, but like I can probably offer them some other like value or something I've learned. And so when it's two-way, it becomes authentic and it feels more like a friendship. So I
Yes.
would say if it's not feeling like a friendship or an acquaintance, but it's feeling more like your first interactions on like a dating app or something, like that's a one-way, like,
Yeah.
maybe
Check
not, maybe
marks.
don't do, yeah. Um, but I think the other thing I've learned, especially like in this climate right now in GDC, is that folks really want to help you, and I want to help people too. And I don't know if I felt the same way. Again, maybe when I was younger, I was more nervous or like thought that I knew everything. Um, but now, like folks have been willing to be like, "Hey, let me look at your resume. Let me connect you with so and so. I heard about this job." Like actually actively reaching out. It isn't always me reaching out, feeling like I'm maybe asking for a favor. But I think that comes when you're trying to build like two-way connections, or
Mhm.
like there's someone in your network, they just launched a game, like I'll play their game, give them feedback. I'll give them like, or anything I can think of that I can bring value to, whether it's like on a professional level
Mm.
or just like a personal level. Like, hey, I heard you like horror movies. Like, did you watch like the latest Exorcist, or like whatever I've watched, and I think that person would actually find some kind of value in, right?
Mhm.
Like, just like getting to know people on a human level.
Yes. Yes. Seeing them besides what can you offer me, expanding beyond that. I think it feels so simple to hear, but it's something that is often skipped, right? Like it's just, let's just connect. Let's build a foundation for a relationship and then we can continue to grow.
And I think it's also in the follow up, like, um, it's not really like, obviously it's great if you have an ask for someone, but like all this like randomly say hi, like, hey, I was like thinking about you, like it's been a couple months, like, like how's life? Like how are you doing? Right? Like
Yeah.
some people are more open on LinkedIn than others. So some folks I know exactly how they are, and like maybe I'll message them and be like, hey, congratulations, or like, hey, like I saw that like emotional post, like just
Mm,
like here for you, like
yeah.
here to support you. And like just going out of your way like that, even if there's no reason why, like I think that also helps like kind of build that real connection. Like I've thought of that person, and instead of like not doing anything, I'm just like, hey, like I just thought of that time when we hung out at GDC or the All-Star game, or like whatever thing that like jogs my memory about them.
Hmm.
So I think people appreciate that. I think
Yeah.
like obviously in the professional world you want to maintain some professionalism, but like you don't want to build this like crazy barrier or crazy wall. And I think
Mm,
like all of like women in gaming, and me in particular, I think especially in the beginning, like I was unintentionally building walls and barriers as a means to like cope with being like a like minority in this industry, right? Like an
hmm.
underrepresented person. But then as you grow confidence, and also I think there's a lot of folks who want to be your ally that you maybe didn't realize. So
Ooh,
once you build some confidence and support, I think it allows you to be a little bit more comfortable and a little bit more like you can break that barrier down.
I like that. I kind of want to tap into something you said, right? Like being a woman, being in a minority in this space. I'm going to give a twist to this question. Obviously, you've got experience in this industry. You've seen it evolve from the Craigslist days to where we are now. For you, especially knowing the gaming space has already even was hit by the Me Too movement and the conversations and the initiatives and DEIs that we've seen come away. How do you think gaming has really changed for women on the professional level, seeing them take on roles, leadership position, and even entering into careers that may not have been as populated by women to begin with?
So I think like, and again, this is it's not statistical, but
Hmm.
like I've gone to probably like 10 GDCs, right?
Hmm.
And I was talking to a friend of mine, like we were reconnecting, and we both made the same comment. Like, I haven't, like, I feel like every year I see more and more diversity, not just women, but like other underrepresented groups and expression. I feel like when I first started going there, I could literally be the only woman in like 100-person room, right? Like, I'm seeing more and more people representing and being interested in breaking in games. Um, like I think it's always going to be challenging. We always we have a there's I feel like we've come a long way, and just, like I don't want to sound cheesy, but we do still have a long way to go. But what I've noticed is just an awareness that there's a problem is big. Like I feel like when I entered the industry, even though it was like pretty obvious, no one was talking about it. No one really like acknowledged that it may be tougher for me. Like, and I
Yeah.
feel like there's been some acknowledgement. I think also like some women have been given, because I don't want to generalize and say everyone, but
Right.
some women have been given like the floor to make a difference. So when I was at 2K, along with two other amazing women, Deb, Deborah Beckman and Holly McIntosh, we co-founded and co-led 2K Women in Gaming, their first ERG, and it became the fastest growing ERG in the company. It actually allowed me to like have some visibility also, because I was like interfacing with executives, and we were trying to figure out, okay, what does our programming look like? What are we like? I mean, I remember working with my two other co-founders, like just figuring out our mission statement and like
Yeah.
how we were going to represent ourselves. I I think like 2K welcomed that, and they wanted that type of ERG and other ERGs too, within the organization. I think when I first started, there wasn't even like a thing called an ERG, like
Yeah.
an employee resource group. Like it's stuff. So I think things like that are helpful because it helps us get amplified ourselves and have a voice for like not just myself but other women that have different experiences than me, like representing.
Mhm.
um and I don't know if that was, I mean, maybe again, I'm just basing it off my own personal experience, but this has been something that's been more in the last like maybe 5 to 8 years I've seen at not just gaming companies but like big corporations in general.
Yeah.
um and I think, and also it provides like a safe space. So we had a lot of public events and things where, we would invite everyone, and then we had some private events that were just like listening sessions, like safe spaces. um and then like segueing into like the second half of your question about just women in leadership, like
Mhm.
I think I'm seeing more leadership. I'd like to see more. Like I feel like I had moments where I was like cheering when I saw Sarah Bond become the president of Xbox. EA has a lot of women at the very top. Like even at 2K, Kelly Gilmore, she's like the studio head of Cloud Chamber. I don't remember there being this many women, but there should be more, a lot more still. So these things to me are really positive because
Mhm.
just having a seat at the table, having awareness of like an acknowledgement of like some of the struggles we go through. Like I feel like I felt more acknowledged
Yeah.
more recently than early in my career, and more open to like talk about this type of stuff. Like, and again, I don't know if it's like if it's just me becoming more confident, or if there's, I feel like there's also been a cultural shift too.
Well, and it can be both, right? As we see it, like
It
one
can
that
be both.
your voice is there and you're ready to share it, and the platform is ready to listen to it, right? Like it needs to be both, and not just you shouting
Yeah.
out into the ether, but people are actually responding. It's received in a welcomed manner. The fact, and I really love that you shared about the ERG, and more employee resource groups are popping up, and you're right to
Yeah.
call out like the many skills that it provides. Like, yeah, you got to talk to execs, you got to build your own skills, and then you also got to help be a part of the resource that does really good work for you and others in that same space. Like that's like it's all so many
And
good things. Like it's every little
it
thing you
lives
want.
on, right? Like
Yeah.
I left the company, it lives on. Like
Mhm.
actually, even earlier this year, I got a really random note, and someone just thanked me for helping start it, and like how much it meant to them, and like we didn't even like know each other that well, and
Mhm.
I'm really glad I was able to be a part of it. I mean, there was a whole, I had two other like co-founders, but then there was a whole team. Like we built a whole like structure to support it. So
Mhm.
it wasn't just me out there. It was like we found people motivated, and empowered that really wanted to make it happen, that like stepped up, because it was like a second unpaid full-time job. Like
Yeah.
that was probably the thing I didn't realize about starting one.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yep.
But I also really enjoyed it. Like I wanted, like it gave me a lot of like energy, and like
Mm.
yeah, it was overall like I would do it again. But now that I know how much time is involved, I would be a little bit more I don't know, I would set a little bit more boundaries probably the next time around.
That's fair.
Um yeah, because I was like at MLB, they did have some employee resource groups. I was a member, so I knew how like a functional one should operate,
Yeah.
but I was never like in a leadership or like committee position. And
Mm.
it is a whole
Yep.
nother ball game.
Yep.
Pardon my terrible pun.
Lot of emails sending back and forth, getting people
A
there
lot of
and
emails.
confirming small details and setting up meeting invites and
Or just getting people involved. Like we'd have a lot of great ideas, and it'd be like, okay, so like who wants to run this amazing thing?
yes.
And it'd be like, sometimes it would be like crickets, other time there would be like people who like,
Mhm.
maybe we'd have too many people for one thing.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of like yeah, a lot of management, but like overall, like I think it's awesome. It's definitely
Mhm.
grown and matured a lot, which is, it's good to see.
Mhm.
um
I'm glad you kind of flagged that though and being realistic, because people are like, oh, well, then let's just everybody start joining or being a part. Because
oh man.
recognizing, like, hey, it's a lot of work. and talking about those boundaries, because especially in an industry like this where we're all excited about it, we're very passionate, and we might use that as our loophole to say, yeah, I'll stomp over my boundaries and spend extra time on this because I love it, right? And how that can drain over
Yeah.
time.
Well, I also think in my situation, it was a brand new ERG. So, like,
Hmm.
there's more processes and things in place now. Like, we were starting from nothing.
Yeah.
So, we were just like, oh, how do we go about doing this thing? Or, like, how should we go about it? Even that was like a conversation, right? It was
Yeah.
like, making sure everyone felt good about like the direction we're going in. And like even for me, like like being inclusive. So like our mission statement also included this is a place for allies and folks who are non-binary who or just identify as women, because I think there's in certain communities there's like and actually I had a conversation with like a non-binary coworker when I was starting this, and I actually like pinged them on Slack, like just they were like, "Hey, I feel like I'm invading the space for women," and I'm like,
Oh.
"No, you're not. I want to hear from you. Like, and how do we make it more welcoming for you?
Hmm.
Because like we're new at this, and like I want you to feel welcome.
Hmm.
Like so." There is a lot of layers to it, but like it's one thing like I'm, super proud of, and like I guess it's still my professional life, but it's not, it's not part of my job description, right? Like,
Hmm.
um, and so yeah, things like that live on. But yeah, I think like the more women who can become leaders and show that they can like grow, like I'm so, especially I mentioned Sarah Bond, like I'm so interested to see like what she does at Xbox, like
Hmm.
you know these women in leadership positions, like I'm really hoping like next year it's like, man, Xbox just made like even more, like I want like not just having them like there being in charge, but like I want these organizations to like thrive under them.
Yes. Yes. You want to see the flourish. You want to see growth. You want to see, like, look, success. And this is what it looks like. I,
Yeah.
that kind of keeps me thinking along the same lines. Like, how, here's where we are now. Like, we've seen improvement. We're seeing more groups. And you're really showcasing, like, a lot of the different opportunities that we see this come around. Let's take this even further in terms of future, right? How do you see the future of women in gaming evolving, right? Especially in terms of like leadership role, visibility. So we're in a better place now. Where do we continue that betterment?
I mean, it's got to reflect society. Like even video games themselves, like the audience used to be, or we were told it used to be, skewing like more male. But
Mhm.
now the audience is really 50-50. I mean, not saying like, I don't know, like I just want to see more seats at the table. Like even when you look at the leadership, it's like the percentages of women in leadership positions, the
Mhm.
percentage of women actually studios getting invested. I'm forgetting the studios off the top of my head, but even this year, I saw a couple headlines of some new studios that were women led getting investment.
Mhm.
I want to see more women led companies get investment so that they can be creative or create a new business. Obviously, I want to see more women in on boards. There's a lack of women on boards in general. And I think we'll get there. It's just like, but at least it's good to see there has been some movement, like you said.
Mhm.
Like my vision is for like our workplaces should reflect society more than it does,
Mhm. Yes.
and that includes leadership positions. So
Mhm.
I guess like I don't know. And I think we'll start to see that, but yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's I think the money part of it, like why I started like ranting a little bit about investment, is a big deal.
Yeah. Call it out.
Um, uh, because if we're not being invested to start new things, then we're not, like let's start funding women from the beginning.
Mm.
Like,
Don't wait till they've had
um,
to, scrape and claw their way to a position.
yeah. Or like it's not just like big corporations that I want to see
Mhm.
women leading. Like I just think like there's so much opportunity, and there's more to go. Like but I'm optimistic. Like I think when I have these conversations, some women I talk to or some people I talk to can be very like down. And I'm like, well, I've seen the fact that I'm here is like, number one, it proves something.
Yeah.
But number two, the fact that I'm seeing more women and more just like underrepresented groups at GDC just in the crowd.
Hmm.
Again, it's a small sample size, but it does to me signify some like visual change. Um, but yeah, I mean, we need to see more of it. And
Hmm.
like, I don't know. I really want, I really want the next woman to make the equivalent of Baldur's Gate 3. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
want that to happen like so hard. And I think it will, like with the right investment and the right ideas.
Hmm.
But like, yeah, if you look at the numbers, it's still pretty like, it can be pretty disheartening to see. And I don't want to like, I'm not going to ramble percentages that I don't know are fact, but like it's just very like pretty abysmal when you start looking at women execs,
Hmm.
women on boards,
Hmm.
women getting investment, and when they do get investment, a lot of times it's a much lower. They're not getting $100 million; they're getting like $100,000, right? Like,
It's a huge
so
price
I want to,
discrepancy. Yeah.
I, I want to see like I just want to see more of it, you know?
Yes. And I'm glad you kind of mentioned investments because I think that's often overlooked because we think of it as like, well, let's hire them. And we're thinking entry level into big companies. But you're right to think about
Yeah.
it like, what are their initiatives where they're starting, that they build this, that they lead it, and we invest that from the beginning. I think that's a really good approach, especially right now when we're kind of entering in what some people are kind of amping up to say is the era of indie games, right? We're seeing a lot more studios with smaller teams or with more diversity in the leadership popping up. It's the time for investors to have the opportunity to pick and choose, right? It's not just triple A's that are dominating the scene again and again, especially on the international market side. Right. So this investment conversation is really primed as we see more indie studios feeling that opportunity to take the stage now as more consumers, more gamers are saying, maybe I should look at these other studios. Maybe I should look at these other games and end. So I love that you're bringing
I
that in.
mean, even when you look at like not a gaming reference, but
Hmm.
like someone like Mark Zuckerberg, like he got investment when he was in college, right? And like now he's a freaking multi-billionaire,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I want to see that. I want to see that for women. I think like, and I think we will.
Hmm.
And maybe there's like whatever, maybe there's examples that I'm just not aware of or I'm not thinking of at the time. um and then your phrasing that this is kind of like an error for indies. I
Yeah.
never actually even thought of that, but I have seen that, and I think it's an answer to like, okay, like we've seen a lot of layoffs. Some folks blame inflation. Like there's so many things different people are blaming, from inflation rates to just bigger companies not holding on to reserves, or these games themselves just costing a lot to make.
Hmm.
So I think indie is almost the solution, because you can be scrappy, you can be nimble, you can get something out there.
Yep.
And as a gamer, like as much as I want some of these like fully like rich experiences, lately I've been playing like a lot of Mario Kart or Rocket League, because I just like want to get in and out in like 10 minutes. Like I just want to I would just want to do feel like I've done something, but like not feel like I need to play 5 hours like at a time.
Hmm.
And I think that's where some of the indie games can come in as well. So yeah, I think it'll help diversify, like not just the people in the industry, but like the types of products and the types of
Yes.
gamers. Like it's gonna be like, I mean, like remember Farmville, right? Like totally dated example, but like these mobile games like really started to get women and like older women in the beginning starting to play. And you look at these like blockbusters like Monopoly Go, right? Like
Yeah.
those audiences are pretty like 50-50, right? Like
Hmm.
they're
Hmm.
pretty well balanced than some of like MMOs or some other types of games. So I think like the more indies you have, the more different types of games you'll make for different people, and you might like strike a chord, right?
Hmm. Yes. Yes. We're seeing a lot more for more people. I think that's a really good takeaway for that. Like, Everyone's going to get their own game. Maybe we'll get our own Farmville. There's probably already a Farmville too, isn't there?
There is, yeah. There's
Yeah, there
so
is.
many of them now. So many clones. There's
Um,
like a million Farmvilles now.
but you're right to say like indie games have this good scrappy approach, and it's a really good place for people wanting to find right their place where they have a voice. Even talking about like your own experience when you first started, the flexibility and the quick elevation you had in your own career, and the chance that you got to learn from many different positions instead of being siloed.
I was gonna say that, like, as risky as indie and startups can be,
Mm-hmm.
um, I think there's a couple rules that I will think about on the fly. But before I get to that, I think like you are able to prove yourself, and like you are kind of a bigger fish in a small pond, so that can be really helpful in the beginning. I would say uh, rules for that is like still make sure you're well compensated. Just because they're an indie or startup doesn't freaking mean you're working for free. In fact, like it may mean the opposite. Or it did for me. They were more lucrative for me. Um, don't and
Mm-hmm.
I think there is, man, how do I put this in a way that won't offend anybody? Don't stay too long. Like they're like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, when you work at a big company, maybe you could stay there for 20 years. Maybe not though. We've seen all these big companies lay people off. I
Yeah.
think indies and startups, like if you're not seeing some like huge momentum in like 2 years, it may not happen, right? So you have to know that and stay knowing that you might be like the last person on the Titanic while it's sinking, or see it building momentum and it might be the next thing. But I feel like startups and indies will start probably running out of, like, if they're able to raise some money, they'll probably start running out of cash in a couple of years. So if they haven't made a hit or they can't figure it out, like that could hurt your career. So like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, you will have to figure it out for yourself. But like they're not the same as maybe working for like a more established company. um and they can kind of be, like they're not going to have all the processes in place. So I think you can also maybe find yourself in an environment that's just like not going to work for you, and it's okay to bounce,
Yeah.
right?
I feel like that's really
um
important to call out because sometimes when you're on smaller teams, it has a much more family approach to it, and it feels like I'm abandoning this project. And while it's okay career wise, like we think it's logical, like it's
feels like
okay.
you're breaking up.
Yeah, it
You're
feels
like,
like you're
oh,
breaking
I
up.
get
I'm
real emotional.
abandoning you people. And that's not it at all. You do have to protect yourself. You have to make those career mobilities. And heck, I think this is also a really smart choice anyway. And we're seeing this more and more often. One, because sometimes companies don't give the raises that we want, and taking diagonal leaps across can be
Oh,
ways in which you negotiate.
you should always bounce.
Yeah.
I think I did not do it enough because
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't it could just be me, so I don't want to generalize, but I think, like sometimes we're trying to I I'll just say this is me,
Hmm.
right? Like sometimes we find ourselves in relationships that maybe aren't working for us, but we're going to try to make them work, right?
Hmm.
I kind of did that in my career a little bit too. Like it's like, man, like I stayed at the first startup I was at for 5 years and MLB for 6.5 years.
Hmm.
Those were like my early days. Had I jumped, who knows? Had I jumped like every 2 years, like who knows? Like, and so
Yeah.
lately I've jumped a little bit more, and I'm like, okay, this is what everyone was talking about when they're
Yeah.
like, it's good to go somewhere for a little while and then do something else. Like one, like financially, at least for me, it worked out better. Like there was a more upward trajectory.
Hmm.
And two, it's like, there's new experiences, new things you can learn. So if you stay at the same place too long, you might find yourself, maybe the industry left you because you stayed at this one big company for a decade or 20 years, and now the whole industry is different.
Hmm.
I think a lot of folks who did like traditional retail,
Yeah.
like when we still had box products on shelves and stuff like that, like
Hmm.
they probably had to adapt. Whereas like I kind of came in completely opposite. I
Hmm.
had to learn about retail and learn about that after I knew about digital, which was like really strange.
Yeah, that's a very flipped process.
while hopping around, you'll learn new things, right?
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
and but like, look, if you have a good thing and you know it's good and it's right for you and it's like paying the bills the way you want, giving you the visibility and like the trajectory you want, totally stay. But I
Mhm.
think in most cases, like there becomes a point in a couple years where it's like it might be good to try something new. You might like grow like whatever you're doing. As a marketer, I grew like I'm assuming like artists, developers, folks in
Mhm.
all other sides of the industry, like you'll just work on different products and
Yeah.
therefore you'll learn something you didn't and you'll meet
Mhm.
new teams. Like
Yeah.
that's the other thing I tell people like jobs come and go, but like relationships are forever.
Mm.
Um
Mhm.
and I still see people like I spoke to people at GDC that I hadn't seen in a while, but that I've known for over a decade. Or my boss at the first startup in gaming actually hired me at Genvid. He was the CMO. So like you never know who you're gonna meet again,
Yeah.
like whoever that is, and you just gotta like you gotta like tend it like a garden
Mhm.
or something. Like I don't
Yeah.
know, it's cheesy to say,
But
but
but diversify your skill set. I think that's what you're getting. Like
for
tend to your
sure,
garden,
yeah.
grow, have
Well,
multiple things. Don't just be like, I'm only doing pumpkins. Because what happens
yeah,
when a virus comes through targeting just pumpkins and then your entire crop's
exactly.
gone? Uh that's the United States
It
and our
goes for it
bananas.
goes for skills and it goes for people, right? It goes for
Yes.
skills and people. Like I think like you'll meet more people that way.
Mhm.
Skill wise, like you don't want to just feel like if you're going to work and you feel like you're doing the same thing over and over again, it's the same thing you did 3 years ago.
Mhm.
Like that's just not good for you as a human. Like I always like to learn. I always like again, if it's not my main quest, I'll have some kind of side quest project or something
Mhm.
where like I'm getting something else. But like, yeah, you've always got to be learning and building yourself up and again,
Yes.
like these connections, like like everyone always says, like don't burn bridges. Like I like just try to be as collaborative as possible.
Mhm.
I think people remember folks who truly appreciated them, acknowledged them, and helped them in some way, right? Like if you go to work and you just you're not like treating everybody the way you want to be treated, they'll remember that, and your network may hurt from that too.
Mhm.
So it's not just about like right now or the next couple years. Like I'm trying to build my skills and my network for the next 5, 10, 20 years.
Yep, yep, you've got to. It makes me think of there was a studio, I can't remember the name of it, but for a while with their internships, they would, of course, hire their interns, pay them, have them learn the way of the world, and then be like, all right. But then they wouldn't hire their interns. Like they made it a point to be like, we
Oh
want you to
man.
go work somewhere else. Then once you get experience somewhere else, then come back to us. Like we want you to have diversity. We don't want you just to do your internship and then work here and then stay here. Like that only gives you the knowledge that we pass down. We want you to bring extra knowledge in. So we'll give you the foundation, go then use it elsewhere and then come back to us. Like that was I don't know if they're still using that practice, but it was along those same ideas of like diversify your experience,
Yeah.
diversify your skill tree. Mm,
You always have, I mean, that's what companies want. At the
yeah.
end of the day, they are looking for you to solve a pain point, or they're looking for your knowledge. And like,
Hmm.
you don't, even if you're right out of college, like you have something you can bring to the table. Obviously, you have to learn, right?
Yeah.
And build a strong foundation. But like, you still have something you can bring to the table. I think everyone needs to kind of maybe be intentional about thinking about what that thing is.
Hmm.
Um, but I think early on, like, and then I did this, it's like you thought the company would teach you something, or like we were talking about mentorship in the beginning of the call. Like, I put it all on a mentor or like whoever I thought was my coach at the time to like teach me. And at some point you have to figure out like what you're giving, what value you're giving to a company, or
Hmm.
like what you can bring back to someone who's helping you, right?
Hmm.
So it's always like full circle. I think like that feels like the theme. It feels like the theme of this podcast,
It's good. We
right?
accidentally found it.
I know. Yeah. This is like totally by accident. I love it.
Honestly, I think these are such great takeaways. I want us to continue this marketing discussion that we've had and how we approach it and where we're working and why we're working at different places. So we're going to take a quick 5-minute break, if that's all right with you,
Awesome.
Shauna. Yeah, we'll breathe. We're going to introduce our pink picks in a second, but Shauna, I'm going to go ahead and let you take your 5-minute break. Go ahead and relax and rest. And for our wonderful friends that are hanging out here, I'm going to say hello to you for a quick second. So let me switch over my camera here. So today we are doing another Pink Picks, and I want us to have this opportunity to connect. So I want you to know that it is our special time of the week right here in the middle of Pink Pixels on Monday, where we shine the spotlight on extraordinary talent within our community. Yes, it's time for the Pink Picks winner announcement. Each week, we've seen an incredible show of talent and spirit from femme-presenting gamers who aren't just playing games. Remember, they're changing the game. And today we have another amazing gamer who has made her part. So a huge thank you, first of all, to everyone who participated in sending in your nominations. Remember, you can do this on Instagram. It's your support that makes Pink Picks, which is powered by Thunderpick, not just possible, but a powerful movement towards inclusivity and recognition in gaming. So now the moment we've all been waiting for. Let's get a virtual drum roll here, please. Da-da-da-da-da. This week's Pink Picks winner is Tony Dominique. Woo! Congratulations! So let's talk about why Tony Dominique is taking home this honor. Tony Dominique is a variety creator known for indie radio personality, cosplay, online streaming, and gaming via Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and Twitch. Tony was born in California and raised in Georgia with a deep passion for bringing light to unseen culture and showcasing that it's never too late to do what you love. With passion, she's cultivated a community called Tiger Town. It's gamers like Tony who inspire us all to push boundaries and to support one another. You can stay connected with Tony on social media at CelebrityATL. And for being such an incredible part of our community, Tony will receive a swag bag from Thunderpick packed with all the essentials any gamer could dream of. We're talking travel gear, high-tech gadgets, and exclusive gaming gear. Remember, this campaign is all about celebrating and supporting our peers. Keep those nominations coming in for next week Pink Picks. Bring those in, and let's continue to lift each other up in this incredible gaming journey. It's important. Make sure you head over to the Gamer's Instagram to learn how you can nominate the next Gamer of the Week. So that's it for this week's Pink Picks segment. A massive congratulations once again to Tony Dominique, and a big thank you to everyone who's been a part of this. Stay tuned for more Pink Pixels, and we'll be back right after our little break. Welcome back, friends. We're here, amazing, with Seana. We're having great conversations, and we're talking about the gaming space, especially from your brilliant marketing mind. I kind of want to dive into some basic terms here, because I think a lot of people, when they think of gaming, they just think of like, oh, I'm going to make the game. I'm hopping into Unity or Unreal, but there's so many more jobs. What does that look like, especially from your perspective and who you've worked with, right? And when people even just think marketing, they might just think like, oh, you're buying Facebook ads, but there's a lot more to it, right?
There is a lot more to it. And like marketing can mean different things at different organizations.
Ooh, yeah.
So in my experience, like I have a pretty broad marketing foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And what that means is not only can I buy Facebook ads like you just mentioned, or I can build a brand, right? Or there's, social community. Like I was really like the center spoke, right? Like I, from a strategy perspective, building a brand platform. And what that means for folks is like, you think of a tagline like Nike, just do it. Well, that's a whole brand platform, like a whole strategy, research, and creative come together to make something like that happen, right? So there's like the building brands part of marketing, which I've done my whole career. And like, how do we make that like work with a creative team or a creative agency to make a cool, sexy like trailer or key art or like cover art, or promote like the next like DLC or like live service thing. That's all marketing. Um, there are folks in marketing that just and I've done a little bit of this, that just focus like all on data and analytics. So I've done enough in that to be like a little dangerous and to mess up someone's like spreadsheet. Uh, but like
That's
there
a
are
hard
people
one
who
when you
just
look at all those Excel sheets and it's like, oh, what?
whoops, should have locked me out of it.
Yep.
No, but like you have to be able to use data. I'm good at using data to tell a story.
Mhm.
Like I'm good at using data to figure out, is this campaign going well or not? Like in some of my examples, it's like we set like a like we want this many players on day one, like for pre-order or whatever.
Yeah.
And then like we see that we're like about to hit our whole yearly goal like before the game is even launched. So you have to use data to be like, hey, this thing's on fire, give me more money so that I can keep pushing more people to it.
Mhm.
Or like, the downside of that is like, hey, maybe this game isn't performing the way we thought. Maybe we should make some adjustments to the way we're spending in marketing or the types of things we're going to do. Marketing also touches influencers, community, social. You're kind of the person who's setting the North Star for like how this brand or game is going to represent itself to its fans and on all the channels, right? Like, and that could be paid, like you said, Facebook ads. It could be in PR. It can be like on Discord, right? And like
Mhm.
a good marketer is going to make sure all these different teams and all these different people are aligned around the same vision, that the brand and the experience is going to be consistent. Because it would be super weird if you had like I'm trying to think of a good brand, like I'm going to just throw out Diablo, right? Like they
Yeah.
have a really fun, playful social media page that makes me laugh.
Yep.
Well, what if I went to Discord and then it was like super serious, right? Like they
Where am I?
maintain that same, yeah, they maintain that like same voice, throughout every touch point. Like, and so a lot of work goes into making sure like whether it's the tagline, the trailer you're seeing, the PR, whatever crazy stunt you're seeing, like it all rolls into one strategy and it's all like cohesive. So like fancy schmancy marketing speak out there, you'll see a lot of jobs in marketing say, we want you to run 360 campaigns. That just means that you're running campaigns on every single touch point that your consumer base is on.
Mhm.
So whether it's a billboard in Times Square or their TikTok page, you're creating the vision for all of that. And you might be working, there's another fancy marketing term, cross-functionally. That just means you're working with different departments or different people. It's like you're one person. Like I can't do my job and also do all the things that I just mentioned. You rely on, hey, you've got a great community manager, social media manager. you might have like a great creative team, right? Like I'm not
Mhm.
sitting there editing the videos, right? But like I'm working with them.
Mhm.
I'm working with that
Yeah.
team to make sure like this is what the impact we want from like every single thing that we're doing.
I imagine you help give them specs. Like if we're trying this on this new platform, by the
Oh my
way, they
gosh.
prefer vertical format. Make sure there are captions on there. Give me that as the VTT so that way I can upload the captions on YouTube or
Oh my gosh. Now we're getting in the weeds.
okay.
Yes, you need to know like what like that's the other thing. That is a big part and it's not the funnest part of a job, but it's like to really know, okay, like are we going to take this how are we going to take this one asset or multiple assets and show up like on the App Store or like on Xbox, Steam, whatever it is, or on a billboard. Like the pre-planning and working with your creative team so that they know what the output is. I
Mhm.
mean, I remember doing like, especially for some of these like larger campaigns, like one trailer could literally turn into like 500 videos because we would translate them around the world too, like in different languages and like all these formats. And usually there would be like a producer type on the creative side helping, but like, yeah, part of the brand's responsibility is like making sure like if we do make something that we can actually upload it to where it needs to be,
Mhm.
and that it looks good. It doesn't look like crap, right? Like because that can happen if you don't have the right specs,
Mhm.
and you're not like on all these platforms. Like I always like to test my creative and just see what it looks like. Yeah, a lot of things can go wrong, but
Mhm.
with like the right planning and like again, all these specs change all the time. That's the other hard part. Is like it's not just like they stick around. It's like, damn it, now TikTok wants this way, and like, now Xbox wants key art this way, or play. Like there's so many different channels
Mhm.
that like it is a job to like when you're briefing stuff in to a creative agency or to a creative team, like to really make sure they understand like okay these are all the touch points.
Mhm.
um I
Constantly
think
changing for the
always,
algorithm practices has got to be exhausting. Not just like, here's the new best practices for thumbnails, or here we're using hashtags, or now we need to have
yeah,
emotes, or, emoticons in our copy in the paragraphs, right? That's,
it all changes like character count, even for copy, like you said, like character counts, like everything. So you have to stay on top of it, even that just like one minor thing,
yeah.
which is like not the strategy. It's like not the creative fun part. But that is like the how it's the get shit done part, right? Like if you don't have it the right way. And yeah, in marketing, like this is a good like segue. Like a big part of it is to brief like creative teams or to brief like different departments so that they know what's expected of them, right? They know like, okay, what are your goals? What's the strategy? Like, and then what's the tactical execution?
Mm.
And if you can't like it, and it takes a while to like really articulate all those things in a very simple, concise brief. Like it's kind of an art form, honestly. But like you learn that stuff over time, right? And because like you are this, like I said, center spoke usually in a lot of organizations where they're looking to me for like, is this right? Does this feel, does this meet like the brand? Like, are we sometimes in marketing we change the messaging because it's not working. Like,
Mhm.
is this how we're messaging this now? Like, and it's also collaborative. Like I take ideas from everybody. Like if I thought I was saying something a certain way and I thought it was great, but then someone comes up and they're like, but what about this? Like, I don't care what department they work for. I'm like, that's a fabulous idea. And like, we should probably start doing it this way. Or, like they can just kind of come out of nowhere. Like great ideas can really,
Mm.
sometimes it can come out of doing some like research and really figuring out like where the audience is, what they're thinking, what the trends are.
Right.
And sometimes it could just come out of like a crazy brainstorming session. Like I think we should get a bunch of people married at WrestleMania, right? Like we like at 2K they did this,
Yeah.
right? Like, and that just came from like a bunch of people being in a room thinking like, what kind of like crazy stunt can we do?
Mhm.
Um,
I'm glad you're kind of talking
and
about this balance, right? Of like, because sometimes people are like, I just want to do the creative stuff. I want to do the pretty things. And Well, being a part of marketing, like, yeah, you get to see like the wedding campaign that went on, which I mean got a ton of coverage. It's still well loved. I still see, snippets of that still coming up around. But it's also being able to say, how do we execute it? And how do we bring that to life? That's hard, that
Yeah.
balance.
And I think that's why marketing sits in the middle, because like
Mm-hmm.
I need to have I need to be able to relate to the product team and the dev team. And like, really, for me, I have to really know and love and play our product, like for me to market it really well.
Mm-hmm.
Some marketers will be like, I can just sell you this pen, right? Like me personally, I like to really like understand everything I can. Um, so that kind of gives me a lot of cred with some of the product team. Then there's the creative side. Like you have to break through the noise, right? Like there's so much stuff happening
Mm-hmm.
all the time, and if you don't have the right creative, like people are just going to keep scrolling, or like their eyes aren't going to stop. So like my goal, and at least in the very beginning, just trying to get someone to download or to initially purchase a game, is like I want to stop them in their tracks enough so that they remember that this game is coming out, and
Mm-hmm.
that like even better if I can make them feel like they really need it enough to pre-order it. Like don't wait for the reviews, like enough just to get in there and like spend some time, like if it's like a mobile game, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
there's no pre-order. And so like that's when you've done that successfully. So you need good creative for that, and then you need like your business hat on, right? Like because everything goes through legal clearances. Like I have to make sure like all my trademarks, all the brand is represented well, that I'm not, that all the music is cleared. And that business hat, right? Like yes, as a marketer, would I want to vie for as much marketing budget as possible? Like I actually understand, in order for all of us to have jobs, like maybe there's a point where we're spending too much, because like we actually need to make money off this game. And between production costs and everything that goes into like publishing, especially a really big game,
Mm-hmm.
like I have to like have that hat on and say, you know what, maybe this particular game doesn't need a $20 million budget and we can do it much cheaper. Or maybe I don't, like at Genvid, like I didn't really have a significant marketing budget at all, but through like, just like understanding what I had to work with, like
Yeah.
we were able to like make it look like we did, because we got people paying attention to like Silent Hill Ascension, and we leveraged our partners like Konami, and we leveraged Google and Apple and all
Mm-hmm.
these things to like bring that to market. So like you don't always need millions of dollars, but like you have to have that business hat on and say like, okay, what's like the most responsible thing I can do? Because at the end of the day, as a marketer, the more I spend, the less money that's getting made.
Yeah.
So at a certain point, like you have to find that sweet spot where like you're bringing in the eyeballs at whatever cost you have,
Mm-hmm.
and you have like the most like maximum value out of that person. So
Yeah.
I think that could be a hard thing for some other departments to understand, but in marketing, you're really in the middle of everything. You have to really understand like what people want and how it works, and like
Both
um
internally and externally, right? Like,
internally and externally,
yeah.
yeah. So it's pretty cool. Like I mean, it's like I think marketing, people who are successful in marketing, especially in video games, are very like multi-dimensional, or at least there's some people who could get like very focused, like I only do this like one facet of marketing, which I love and respect those people too. But I think
Mhm.
early on, like the more multi-dimensional you can be, you'll maybe discover like what you're like really good at. Because for me, like I didn't start on the brand side, I started on the B2B side at a startup. And then because I was exposed to certain things, I said, you know what, like I want to be a consumer marketer, because like that's where like the creativity is happening. Like I want people to discover their next favorite game because of like something I did,
Mhm.
right? um and so I think like that's kind of the cool thing about marketing. And to your point, like it's not just about this is a big business, right? So
Right.
like if you're if you're a great, like we were talking about this earlier, if you're a great accountant, lawyer, like you're great at partnerships. Like we need all of you. Like it's not just, I think in college you can get stuck in like the I want to create a thing. Like I mean, I think you should, if that's what your passion is and you're like
Yeah.
an artist or engineer, freaking go for it. But like if that's not really your thing and you haven't figured it out yet, there's so many different jobs that you can do
Mhm.
and be really successful at
Yeah. I think people
in the
forget
industry.
that they can go on LinkedIn and like look at a company and just see like a list of all the people who have different
Yeah,
job titles. Like just type in your favorite studio, see all the job titles of the people who work there have. Like there will be plenty
absolutely.
that you will not recognize. And looking into that can be so eye-opening. Be like, well, I never even considered that was an option.
I think that's good too. And like to your point, like even if you have a general idea and you're like, hey, I want to be a marketer or I want to be, an artist, like
Mhm.
if you look on LinkedIn and you look at the people and you find someone you admire that you're like, I'm not going to say you should have, copy anyone's life, but like you're kind of like, that's like what I want to do.
Yeah.
Like I think you should look at their career path. Not everyone's career path makes sense like mine. Mine was like a little bit of an octopus.
Mhm.
Um, but you can kind of see like, oh, like they're the CMO and they got this because they were, whatever. If they had a linear path, marketing associate, marketing manager, maybe they did some partnerships or something, and then like they just kept doing it, and now they're the CMO, right? Like
Yeah.
same thing. Like maybe you like the head of game design at this company you really like, and you can really see like where they started, and that can give you a sense of like maybe like what kind of skills you need, like and what you can pick up along the way. So again, not everyone's like career paths are going to be like super linear, but I think it's cool to find like I'll look at other like amazing marketing people in the space that are like winning awards, and I'm just like
Mhm.
curious to see what they did, what they worked on. Like a lot of marketing people may come from agencies or other brands, like not in gaming.
Yeah.
Um, and but like yeah, you can kind of get a sense of like, okay, that's like where I want to be.
Yes.
Like for me,
It
it's
gives
like
you a
everyone
vision.
asks you, and it gives you a vision. Everyone
Yeah.
asks you that like awkward question. Hopefully, they don't ask it anymore in interviews. Like, what do you want to do in 5 years? For me, it was much easier to like see it that way than to
Mhm.
like try to make up an answer. It's like,
Yeah.
actually, like I can see that someone actually did it,
Mhm.
and like I want to do something similar or like my version of like what they did.
Yes. I think that's a better answer, and I think people do
Yeah.
worry about that, but here's a fun little tip for the listeners out there. No one remembers what you answer, so it's never in concrete. They're asking to
That
just be
is
like,
true.
what how do we help you get? Like, is there an opportunity for you to grow here in the way that you want to grow? Like, so don't worry. That's hopefully a good interviewer is asking that for that reason, but you never know with some people.
I hope they never ask that question anymore because I
And
feel
just
like it's
retire it.
not a great one. But to your point, they're kind of testing to see like, okay,
Mhm.
what's your growth? Like, is this
Yeah.
job maybe going to lead to what you want? And
Mhm.
I think like you just come in with confidence, even if you're like me and change your mind all the time.
Yeah.
You just come in with a confident answer. They're like, okay, this person is focused and motivated, like has a plan.
Mhm.
um Let me tell you, they once you get like further on, they don't ask you that question
Like,
anymore.
we don't know if you've
At a
got 5
certain
years left.
point,
No.
I know they're like, put me out to pasture. Like shit. No.
It's hurt. It hurts us. It hurts. That's why I dye my hair to hide all the grays. It's fine.
Well, it looks great.
Thank
It
you.
looks great.
Thank you.
Um,
But I want to actually tap in because you have such a brilliant marketing approach, and you've worked on so many campaigns. How do you believe, especially in these portrayals, how women in these games have been portrayed has evolved over the years, right? Because it's changed, and there's plenty of cases of like who's on the front cover, what's the main character, even when there are options or when they can be, adapted in character creation. Who are we showcasing? Who owns this story? Who's the protagonist? How are they displayed?
oh, I love this question so much
Good.
because it's like it like pulls at my like gaming nerdy like strings, heartstrings.
Mhm.
I guess like generally speaking in games, right? If
Yeah.
we're going back, you know, to the beginning, like women were like we were damsel in distresses. Again, I'm talking pretty generally,
Yeah.
but it's like Mario's rescuing the princess, right? Like even like Legend of Zelda, right? Like it's amazing that Zelda is this ominous like but you're trying to find her, sort of rescue her, whatever.
Yeah.
And then um they just became more complex um like and I think they started like now we have women that are represented in so many different ways in games, but like I'm just thinking like in the beginning it's like okay, Tomb Raider, okay, she was a badass. Granted, like I don't know if I could be doing all those expeditions in that outfit she was wearing, or like Jill Valentine in Resident Evil. Like
Mhm.
I finally have a gun now, right? And like like I think like those type of women, especially early on when I was growing up, I was like, okay, I identify with them more, right? Like
Mhm.
early on, and I loved like Mario, and I loved a lot of the early video games, but like the whole damsel in distress thing was like that's not me. Like I'm tough. Like I growing up played basketball, right? Like I just didn't identify with that, you
Yeah.
know, like
You don't see yourself
but
as
then
that character.
yeah, but then more multidimensional characters came to be, and and I think now even more like they're just like even like different skins, and like when you look at
Mhm.
Overwatch, when you look at all these other games like League of Legends, it's like they're such badasses,
Yeah.
and they have blue hair, they have different, they all are different shapes and sizes, right?
Mhm.
So we're kind of getting away from that damsel in distress, or like I guess there's still a lot of games that like we won't get it. This is a whole different podcast, but like overly like sexualized women. But like I think I'm seeing just more women that are different, and they're complex. Like they're not like caricatures or stereotypes. Less so, I guess.
Mhm.
In sports, like this is oh my god, this is an amazing year for women being represented in sports
Yeah.
games. So before I talk about that, like for the folks on the podcast, like the first female like sports team, that was like FIFA 16. And
Mhm.
I remember I actually bought 16 so I could play, play as them,
Yeah.
right? Like I was so excited. Um, then like you fast forward like to NBA 2K20, that's when they first put WNBA in.
Mhm.
Again, super excited. Couple years later, they had like Candace Park on the cover of
Yeah.
of 2K. I think it was 2K22.
Wow.
Um, this year we have women in NHL on the cover. We have female refs in Madden. Like there might not be female players in football right now, but at least like there's some more representation.
Mhm.
My team over at MLB, like they added, playable women to MLB the Show. They have a whole campaign about it.
That's
It's
awesome.
actually pretty amazing if you folks haven't checked it out. And like even in golf, like when I was working on 2K, they were gonna add, and they did add like the
Mhm.
LPGA to PGA Tour 2K. EA did the same thing.
Mhm.
So we're really seeing like a lot more women in sports being represented, and to me, it's exciting because it's not just like putting a female head on a body, right? Like there to do this right, for women to like move the way they move. Again, like sports games are iterative. Ugh, can't talk. But like it'll get better, but just the fact that they're in,
Mhm.
right? And like it's a big investment for these companies because they have to move, women move differently than men. We look different. If they're doing a really authentic take on it, like golf, like the LPGA has different rules. Like it's different than like it's
Yeah.
not just as easy as like we're adding a female character model, and they have to look good, right? Like they have to put the same amount of emphasis on the scanning, on how authentic they look as the male players, or it's gonna look terrible,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and these are
So
actual people, right? They want
these are actual people, right?
you got to kind of do right by
And
them.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So I like it makes me excited because sports was always like, even in general, like not just video games, but in sports, it's like there's always reasons like, oh, like people don't watch that much, or
Yeah.
like I don't know. I feel like we're just getting a lot more exposure for women. There's a lot more, I think, to go. But like the investment from these companies to do it right, I
Mhm.
think is really, really amazing because I think for many years they either didn't include them because they couldn't, or financially or technically speaking, or again, like I said, I think um, MLB the Show, 2K, and EA has really made a concerted effort. And for me, like when people were talking to me about video games and sports, like I didn't know anything about football when I was a kid, like at all. Like I know my parents watched it, but then I started playing Madden, and then I understood. Like I learned who the players were, and I learned the rules of the sport.
Yeah.
And like the video games are going to help the actual sport, like the WNBA, like just as much as anything else that they're doing. And it's going to like give young girls, or even boys, like awareness of who these amazing people are, and like maybe inspire them, right? Or
Yeah.
like I feel like there was always, and it's still here, like like girls aren't as good at sports as guys or
Oh.
whatever.
Yeah.
And like I feel like including them breaks that down a bit.
Hmm.
So I think it's this year has been exciting because like
Yeah.
I haven't seen as many women on covers of video games. They're in these games now, and they're done, like at least from what I've seen, like they're
Hmm.
done pretty well, right?
Yes.
Like I would be so disappointed if
If
I
they
logged
didn't.
in and I'd be like, damn guys, like
Where is the audience
like
here? Come show some support, right? This is the moment.
you finally included us, but we're like the most janky character model, like
Yeah.
I feel like they've done they've done the best that they can, and it's only going to get better because sports games,
Yeah.
they're always going to continue to improve everything. So
Well, I'm glad you kind of tapped into the relationship between, because sometimes when we think of video games as a whole, right, we definitely think of some of the very narrative based ones. But within
yeah,
sports, there is a unique tie because they're reflective and inspired by like the actual players and their actual stats and their
for
gameplay that they
sure.
do. Do you think that is also maybe perhaps hindered the amount of women in sports video games that we've seen, because we've been waiting on like the sports proper to get that same kind of attention or appreciation or wanting to cover it? Like
That's a really
obviously,
good
I
question.
mean, we
I
don't have
think
any
I think that
NFL women yet at this point because the NFL hasn't helped prompt that as much until now or as lately. So,
yeah, I mean, I think it's I think it's a tough question. I think like that attitude of like um waiting for the sport was kind of,
mhm,
I think, what video game companies were doing in the past. But I really think like, you know, FIFA, 2K, EA, MLB, like it's significant investment, and like there's still a lot to go in terms of like popularity of women in those sports. But did certain things maybe help with that? Like in FIFA 16, like if the women's World Cup, US World Cup team didn't win the World Cup, like in the
mhm,
crazy like real life moments, like would we have had women that early in FIFA? I don't know, but
mhm.
I think like with some of these other sports, like they are women are getting more visibility, um, and that's reflective. But I think like um, there have been some efforts made beyond that because, like I said, I think like video games are what connects sports to this youth audience,
Mhm.
and the fact that they are including them like is, like I said, significant investment.
Yeah.
And I think they're being proactive about it. Like they're not waiting for the next women's World Cup team, right? They're saying like MLB. I think what prompted that was a woman playing professional in one of the minor league teams. Or like Candace Parker is such a beast. Like you can't ignore her, right? Like
Hmm.
she is the female LeBron James, right? Like
Yes.
she needs a moment. Like I'm not as familiar with NHL, but those women look completely like I would not mess with them. Like I think there's like more exposure on TV, but I actually think video games are doing better than traditional like television right now, to
Ooh.
be honest.
Yeah. Picking fights
That's
here
my hot
now.
take.
That's your take it. No, I think that's well, right. Let's dive into that, right? Because I think that's actually a really interesting switch because media is evolving, right? Even movie theaters, we've seen actors come out like, you need to go to the movie theaters because people are like, movies are dying. We're changing and watching. What else are we watching instead, right? Like, you
Yeah,
put video games on that competitive platform, saying we're your competitor.
we are. We totally are. And like I mean it's all a competition for mind share when it comes down to it. So um I may look at this more broadly than a lot of people, but like when I'm marketing a video game, yes, I have some direct competition most of the time, but also Netflix is my competition. The movies, like anything that is competing for mindshare is my competition because when you don't have time to play my game and you're doing something else, like shit, like I've done something wrong as a marketer or we've done something wrong in the game where you've fallen off and like now this other thing Dune 2 is more important now, right? Like, so we have to find ways to stay relevant. But for me, it's like, yeah, anything that's entertainment competes with like a video game and a video game product I'm working on, right?
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
I think the one exception to your point though
Yeah.
is sports can be complementary because okay, like if I'm a baseball fan and it's winter, I can't play or watch the sport
Yeah.
until spring training, right? And you'd have to be like super hardcore for that.
Hmm.
But like I can play the video game. Like same with football. Like football's such a short season.
Yeah.
Um, what do I do in the meantime, right? So I think they do complement each other.
Hmm.
And what most sport when you're working on sports games, they do try to update roster. They try to mimic the players and the rosters as like accurately and as real time as possible.
Yeah.
So if one team or one player is doing really well, they're probably like adjusting those stats. Otherwise it'd feel really weird, right? Like some players have like hot and cold streaks, but that's like honestly, that's a lot that goes into just maintaining the sport, like
Yeah.
keeping the sport as authentic as possible when you're working on like a more of a simulation type game.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you're working on a sports game that's more on the arcade side, it probably is not as important.
That's true. More
Um,
static. I wonder if there's like someone
yeah,
behind the scenes like, I wish they would just keep staying the same. Why are they
yeah.
going through so many moments up and down? Just quit making me go
Yes,
in here and change your stats.
the producers and like the engineers are exactly. There's like a whole team that's like, damn it. Um, I mean, and on the flip side, it makes it like unlike other games that are more narrative where you're controlling the story, you can't control
Mhm.
the story. So like
Yeah.
say someone does something really awesome, you want your game to reflect that.
Hmm.
Say something really terrible happens, like players pass away, like things happen, and like you
Yeah.
have to like the teams have to be on top of it, right?
Hmm.
It's almost like a news cycle, right? Like
Hmm.
because it would be
Yeah.
super embarrassing, right? If you
Yeah.
didn't update the game or pay your respect in some way,
It's a
or maybe
community.
something else happened that like they
Hmm.
got suspended or this or that.
Yeah.
So most of these like simulation games, like the AAA games that I mentioned, like
Mhm.
they're doing everything they can to make sure that these players like perform the way that they're supposed to, that they look the way they're supposed to. I mean, we used to like joke around, like someone would take like at MLB, like a player would take a picture during spring training and maybe they'd have long hair and like a crazy beard and we're like, damn it, he got a haircut. Like
How dare
we're like,
he?
whatever. Yeah.
He gets a new tattoo,
Um
like
and then that's the producer and now your art team is like, grumble, grumble, grumble. Like, no, we have to fix the way they look. Or you decide not to because you're like, maybe they'll grow it back or something. I don't know. But
Is it just long
there
right
is
now
this
for
like,
this season of their life?
exactly. But there is this like trying to match reality that can be really tough. And to your point, like the fidelity and like just the gameplay on these particular games have evolved so much
Hmm.
that if you're trying to like start making a sim game from scratch to compete, it's going to be really tough
Yeah.
because these games have been around, like they've been building off of like some of them 20 years or more of like experience.
Hmm.
And it is really jarring when you know what LeBron looks like, and if he looks busted in the game, like, oh my gosh, like that's not good.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
even if it's fun, it's gonna take you out of that like um I don't know, that fantasy, right?
Yeah.
Like
That you're not on the team anymore, that you aren't
yeah,
playing with it. I mean, because that's what it like you when you control like that's the highest degree of immersion into the game that
it
you can
is.
get. I mean, you can go to the games, maybe a ball will get thrown at you. That's your best bet at that point, you know. But you're not going to be invited to join the team and play and score at any point in time, no matter what sport it
Exactly.
is. It's such a
Exactly.
I love how you
Or
mentioned
do
like
your
this being
fun like
complimentary.
imaginary matches, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh, what if like I made this dream team of these guys who never played together or will never play together
Oh,
or like
yes.
whatever. It's so much fun. Like it's so great.
It gives so much more control, but you're right that there's that balance of how do we give them this control, this world that they get to create where they're in the game, they get to be a part of it, they get put together their team, and at the same time have that right degree of realism. That's a difficult
For sure.
balance. Yes. It did
It
make me
is. And
think.
like,
Yeah, go
oh
ahead.
my God, all the teams working on these games are
Hmm.
just incredible. Like
Hmm.
the things that they notice and pick up, and like some sports like baseball are more like data oriented than others. Like it's pretty impressive. Like it really all of these games, any game, even if it's not a sports game, like it really does take a team and a village to
Hmm.
like do it right on that level, right?
Now, on your end with marketing, right? How much do you see with like we got to get their stats in? How does that then impact your role or does it?
Um, it doesn't impact my role that much other than like when I'm working on a sports title, I am paying attention to the sport, right?
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that like we are reflecting as much as possible, or like
Mm,
if there's a roster update, that's a communication point, like, hey, we saw so and so like threw a no-hitter, like in the next roster update we're doing, usually like companies will have some, especially for sports games, some kind of cadence on when like there
mm-hmm,
might be a new like update to the game, like, and being transparent about that, right?
mm-hmm.
But yeah, for me, I think it's not as important. I mean, I need
Yeah.
to know if it's like not going to reflect reality, because then that's when you'll get like people on like social media like making fun of us or complaining or saying like, hey, we're like idiots because this athlete doesn't perform as well in the game as they are during the season, right? Like
Of course.
you have to know. But like that's someone's whole job is like maintaining those stats and like maintaining the balance, right? Because
Hmm.
like these like athlete ratings, like there's a system behind the scenes and every company kind of does it a different way.
Hmm.
um but like, yeah, you want it to be accurate. And for me it's just like, okay, like I get a sense from the producers like how accurate it is or when it will be accurate, and then we can like let the community
Hmm.
know.
I feel
And
like
it's like,
that's a lot
it's
to
okay. You
juggle.
can also laugh at yourself too. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, we know like so and so isn't updated yet. Like,
We'll get
yeah,
there.
we know. Yeah, exactly. We'll get.
Heard, thank you, we're aware, in progress. Because I think with sometimes people assume like with studios, like you just control, but I know you've got a lot of
Sorry, my
thoughts
husband.
too. I love it.
My husband just came home.
But you're also dealing with the additional challenge,
Sorry.
hey, of the schedule, the details of an entirely other entity, right? Like When Larian Studios was
Yeah.
dealing with Baldur's Gate 3, like the issues and around it was just them internal. But you are now having like an external partnership of what they do and when they
Yep.
announce it or changes that they make that now influence and have to make changes in your game. And sometimes they're not probably, I assume, nice to give you a heads up about some of those so you can launch it at the same time.
Well, you always have to work with, like, whether it was a sports game, or at GenVid, I worked with other licensors.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, like, yeah, you have to be on the same page
Right.
as your licensor, right?
Yeah.
Like, so if you work on a sports game, you're getting a license from the sports organization, and usually the Players Association, as well. At GenVid, we had a license with Konami,
Mm-hmm.
and with DC and with Gearbox. So, there is a, I don't want to say it's political, but there is a relationship. You usually have to have them on board with your strategy as
Okay.
well, and
Mm-hmm.
that would include, like, hey, how many updates, and how many how are we going to handle a particular certain situation, in the case where, like, um, something unforeseeable happens, like,
Yeah.
you'd probably have to get approval, like, you probably have to get approval to say, hey, this situation happened and we're going to deal with it this way,
Yeah.
right? And, like, but yeah, when it's your own IP, you don't have to worry about that.
Mm-hmm.
There's less of a layer involved. So
Wow. I feel like we're just scratching the surface of
I
all it
know.
takes. Every time like there's more details or just illuminating so much that I think people don't realize goes on, especially with how many departments and individuals are communicating to try to make these amazing games
So
that we love.
much.
Yeah, it's a lot. I want us to end on one final question because we're closing in on time.
Sure.
Is what advice would you give to individuals, especially women, who are interested in doing what you do? How do we break into the gaming space? Where do we begin? Because Craigslist isn't really the same starting point for us anymore. Sorry, I keep bringing it up. It's still just, it boggles my mind.
I
Uh,
know, I know. It boggled my
that's
mind when I said it.
wild.
Since we're full of sports references, and I finally watched this movie because it was on, like, the Oscar list. So there was a movie called Naiad, about Diana Naiad. She was a swimmer in
Mhm.
her 60s who tried multiple times and finally made it. Sorry, spoilers. She swam from Cuba to Florida, which, like, everyone thought would be impossible.
Yeah.
And she attempted it when she was at the height of her prime, in her 20s. She was like an Olympic swimmer.
Mhm.
Didn't make it, and then, like, tried it again in her 60s and failed like three or four times before she made it. So I like just watched this movie last week. So
Mhm.
the three things she said that I will kind of copy and then tweak and maybe add one is never give up.
Okay.
I think, like, I'm pretty resilient, and you need to be resilient, to be a woman in any, not just games, but in any space that isn't traditionally for you.
Mhm.
Like, it's gonna be harder to open those doors sometimes, or you're gonna have moments where you're feeling like you should be progressing faster, or maybe you're like rejection, right? Like, you're interviewing, is just like, never give up.
That resilience is so
um
important. I love that. That's a great advice.
the second thing she said is, you're never too old. And I think this is maybe less for, like, folks who are pretty young and in college. Like, you can, even if you never were in gaming, your skills are transferable. So we were talking about, hey, this industry is full of, not marketers and lawyers and business people. Like, there is a space for you. It may be hard and, like, weird to get in. Like, it was not straightforward for me either. But, like, and you're never too old to switch skills. Like, say you went to school for one thing. Like, I was trying to be a film producer, and now I found a career in gaming. Like, those things just happen. Like, and I think, like, we have this mentality, like, oh, I'm this age now and I'm not like an expert, or I'm not like the prodigy. So I'm like I can't do that now.
Yeah.
I would say you always have to keep learning, especially in marketing. Like platforms change, people change, like game mechanics change. Like you can't just be doing the same thing, right? So you can always learn a new skill, um, or learn something about, like the way you've been doing things. Um, and then this is kind of like we were talking about, like there's a whole network of stuff. So the last thing she said, but I'll take a spin on it, is like everyone thinks that swimming is like a solitary sport,
Right.
but she had a whole team that helped get her there. And so my spin on that is, it isn't just you're not just the solo character. It may feel like that sometimes, but we were talking about, the more you connect, the more you network, the more you like tend to that network and grow it, and like the better, like, and these people are going to follow you throughout your career. So stay in touch, like find the people who are going to come up to bat for you. They may not be the like most obvious people, but if they're in their corner and they're willing to help and they're willing to listen, these are people you need to follow up with too, right? Like, because there's going to be some way you can pay it forward, right? Like, even if it's just making their day a little bit better, right? Like just by saying hello and like letting them know you're thinking about them. Like it can be as easy as that, right? Like, and to me, like people who follow up with me, like it does make a difference. I'm like, wow, like shit, like I didn't realize maybe we had that relationship, or I had that impact on that person. And so yeah, like show up for the people showing up for you, and like make sure, like if you do move jobs or like whatever you do, like you got to stay in touch with these people. You never know where people are going to land. You never know. Like, you just never know. And like, you never know how they could help you. And vice versa. Right?
Nurture that network throughout, always.
Nurture it. Nurture it. And I guess like just never stop. Like I was just saying, like never stop learning, but also just like if this is your passion, if video games are your passion, like also never stop, like play as many games as you can. Like I think it's easier said than done, especially like for me, like the more you get in your career and you're spending lots of time like working on games, like I've had points where I like didn't play any games because I was like so exhausted, but I always find my way back. I think like if you do that, you're gonna know what people are playing. Like there's gonna be something you're gonna learn from whatever game or experience. And like, yeah, you just never know. It's like, I don't know, I would never work in the film industry and like stop watching movies. Like just
that's a good point.
It's a part of I think it's a part of learning, is like experiencing what other people are doing.
I think those are great and actionable. And that last one is a good reason to say, start playing more games. Don't just play more games. Play more games. I love just going into Steam every now and then and seeing like, what are the latest new games that are out there? Just see what's there. See if something catches your eye.
I've been doing that like on mobile more too. It's like there are so many people playing, like there's more people playing mobile games than like any other. And I'm like, sometimes I forget because I'm such like a hardcore console player. It's like, actually, like there's some pretty great freaking games like on mobile, and like they're completely different experiences than that like RPG or like whatever that you might be playing. So
yes, that's actually a really good point. Now I'm thinking like, because I know some of my favorite games have mobile versions and I've never given them a shot. Like, I don't know if this would be a whole new way to experience this game.
True. Or just like play whatever's like at the top, like if you haven't played Monopoly Go yet, like see what all that ruckus is all about, right?
Yeah. Learn.
Like
research.
I never thought I'd get into like Words with Friends or like even some of those games, but like, hey, there's a moment for them sometimes. So.
They get their heyday and enjoy it. See what it connects. And I think you're spot on, right? Like you're playing the games, but you're listening at the same time. You're not just using it as turning your mind off. You're looking at it, you're analyzing it, you're curious about this game and what makes it so interesting to others. I love you've shared so many great perspectives, and I'm so excited that we had you here on. Where can people stay connected with you, right? What's your platform of choice?
My platform of choice is LinkedIn always. So it's just slash Shauna Cavanagh. And if you can figure out how to spell my name correctly, or actually it's down there.
It's tagged in the chat.
And like, yeah, for people who are joining, like reach out. Like I am very approachable. It's not scary. Like I love talking gaming and yeah, hit me up on LinkedIn.
All right, you heard it, friends. It's that easy. When we talk about networking,
That
building
easy.
conversations, make it happen, right?
Make it happen.
Nurture your network, right?
Oh man, this is a blast. Thank you so much for having me.
You're amazing. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you so much, Shauna. One more time, you're fantastic. Remember, friends, if you're not following her on LinkedIn, you absolutely need to send a connect. And I encourage you, if you're connecting, add a message too. Does wonders, helps
Please
people connect.
do.
Yes.
So I know who you are.
Yes, yeah. Tell us why. It helps. It out of when we continue to connect with people, having that kind of discussion makes a world of difference and gives a nice little track record of actually remembering how and why these relationships first started.
Exactly. Very, very sound, good advice.
Yes.
I love that.
Thank you. All right, friends, we're going to wrap up for today. Thank you for joining us for another amazing episode of Pink Pixels, and we'll see you all next week. Goodbye, friends.
Bye, y'all. Bye.
Get out of here. All right. Oh, hold on. My ending button didn't work. That's fine. Hold on one second. We're just going to wrap up stream by